All right, welcome into Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for being here with us. Some massive breaking news on the eve of NBA free agency. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, James Harden is picking up his player option. He's opting into that $35.5 million one-year deal, and now him and the Sixers are going to look for scenarios in which they can work out a trade to deal away the 10-time All-Star. Adrian Wojnarowski tweeting this out on Thursday afternoon saying this: Harden is picking up his $35.5 million player option, and the sides are beginning to work together in exploring trade scenarios, sources tell ESPN. It's expected that James Harden has played his final game in a Sixers uniform. As for the two teams said to be the most interested in Harden in the immediacy of the moment right away after this report, it's the Los Angeles Clippers and it's the New York Knicks, the two teams that will engage with the Sixers on a potential James Harden trade. According to Woj as well, the Sixers found out that Harden was going to opt into that deal, and they started to put out some feelers as for where they could trade him. The latest from Shams Charania says this: the Clippers and potentially one more team expected to emerge as interested franchises in trade talks with the 76ers. The Sixers made it clear throughout the process that the franchise did not see a long-term future with James Harden on this basketball team. Before we continue to move forward, dissect all of this and break it down, make sure you subscribe to the show. I'm Chase Sr. I grew up in Westchester, lifelong Sixers fan, went to Temple University. My heart has been broken by this team many, many times throughout my lifetime, so we can agree on that. We're approaching 11,000 subscribers, and anytime that breaking news happens, we have you covered. And with free agency beginning on Friday, we're going to talk about every single move that the Sixers make this offseason. Hit that sub button for year-round Sixers coverage. So some thoughts on this before we take a look at some players that the Sixers could trade for here. Every insider was wrong about this James Harden situation. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. It wasn't reported by Adrian Wojnarowski. It wasn't reported by Shams Charania. Here on the show, we talked about the reports from Mark Stein, Chris Haynes, Brian Windhorst. The believed expectation was that Harden was going to come back to the Sixers on a multi-year deal, and if he opted into that player option, that could have made sense to try to work on a long-term contract extension. But a trade of the beard is a scenario that nobody saw coming to fruition, and it looks as though that's going to happen any moment now. This is Daryl Morey's boy here. Daryl Morey became the leading executive for the Houston Rockets. He traded for Harden when he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder, when at the time he was a sixth man. James Harden ended up being one of the best trades in the history of the NBA for the Houston Rockets because he became one of the best, most explosive, and most efficient offensive players in the history of basketball. And Daryl Morey acquired him once with Houston. Then he comes to Philadelphia. He waits out the Ben Simmons trade saga for as long as he can, and he won that deal as well because Ben Simmons wasn't even playing. James Harden did. And he traded for James Harden once again. So for him to trade him here, this is significant in the relationship between Daryl Morey as well as James Harden. Given the playoff flameouts, the age of Harden, soon to be 34 years old, the slight decline that we've seen, the money that he could demand on a new contract, it's clear that the Sixers obviously want to move on, and they did not envision a future of him playing alongside Joel Embiid. I'm also curious about this talking point here. And I said this here after Nick Nurse's introductory press conference. He said at the time that he would like James Harden back, but it wasn't convincing by any means. It wasn't a definitive statement that we need James Harden to be a member of this team. So I imagine that Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey have had a lot of conversations throughout this offseason, and Nick Nurse and him came to the solution that the best path forward for the 76ers was to trade away James Harden. And I also wonder what Joel Embiid is thinking here. If Daryl Morey swings and misses, and he deserves a lot more credit than what people are giving him because he's made some really good trades running basketball operations for Philadelphia, If this trade does not work out, I would be surprised if Embiid is a Sixer a year and a half, 2 years from now. Because if there's another playoff flameout, if the trade doesn't work and the assets that come back don't end up producing, Joel Embiid could get to a point when he's going to be 30 years old at this point next year where he could demand a trade. Let's get to some more reporting here. Chris Mannix, the Clippers, among the teams interested in James Harden, but the Sixers are already casting a wide net, sources tell Sports Illustrated. Philadelphia's front office has engaged with multiple teams looking for a package of players that will fit alongside Joel Embiid. So the two early teams that we know of as of right now, it's the Clippers and it's the New York Knicks. Some obvious Clippers trade targets here, and I want to put in Zubats as well if you want some insurance as a backup center for Joel Embiid. Kawhi Leonard or Paul George would be a massive win for Philadelphia, especially if you package James Harden and Tobias Harris to get one of those two superstars. Kawhi Leonard is always injured, but he's won 2 championships. During both of those championship runs, he has been named NBA Finals MVP. I'm of the belief that you win championships with wing players, and Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, and that's the big caveat, when healthy, is one of the best two-way wings in the NBA. Paul George, when healthy, he hasn't played more than 50-plus games in 5-plus seasons, is also a premier wing in this league who is very good on both ends of the floor. And if you run with Tyrese Maxey as your point, and either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George on the wing with Joel Embiid, DeAnthony Melton, PJ Tucker, that's a very good two-way lineup, of course operating under the premise that Tyrese Maxey is going to take that massive leap forward. Norman Powell is a player who the Clippers have been said to be shopping. He would be a solid starter and even better bench player who could put the biscuit in the basket. We know about Robert Covington as a 3-and-D player who would be a good role player. And then in the comments section here, as we're live on 76ers now, Nishab Bones-Hyland at a VCU, second-year player, isn't afraid to shoot the rock. I thought it was pretty telling that the Denver Nuggets traded him away at the NBA trade deadline last year because he's a player who wanted to do his own thing on an island, and he didn't really mesh well with Nikola Jokic, and it's pretty much impossible to not fit alongside the Joker. So those are some of the Clippers trade targets here. And then we shift gears to some players that the Sixers could inquire about up I-95, downtown Manhattan at Madison Square Garden with the New York Knicks. R.J. Barrett and Evan Fournier make sense from a financial perspective because James Harden is making $35.5 million on the final year of his deal. In the NBA, you have to find a way to match salaries here. You could throw in a Julius Randle here, but I think that would be a disaster because Joel Embiid has already struggled in the playoffs. Julius Randle is not a good playoff player, and to have a 4 like that alongside Embiid, it would be clunky. Now, R.J. Barrett, a solid young player whose three-point numbers have gone down precipitously over the last couple of years, but he does have some ability and is under contract for the next couple of years as a young asset. Evan Fournier, a bench player who's making a lot of cheddar, a veteran who can really do everything offensively. Not the greatest defensive player, though. I'm very lukewarm on him. Emmanuel Quickley and Tyrese Maxey were both selected out of Kentucky in that same draft class back a couple of years ago. I'd be somewhat intrigued with that being your backcourt because they did it at Kentucky, but I think Quickley is more so of a 6-man as he was in the running to win 6-man of the year last year. Quentin Grimes, very good spot-up three-point shooter, played his college basketball at Houston. In year 2, he started to break out. And then Obi Toppin, another first-round pick, a lot of flash with him, lacks consistency. If he can develop a corner three-point shot, with him being a high flyer, he too would be an intriguing asset. So these 5 players on the Knicks, in addition to Julius Randle, could be options for Philly. A dream scenario, obviously, would be Jalen Brunson, but he is the catalyst. He is the leader of that Knicks team. He solidified himself as a top 5 point guard last year. There's no way that the Knicks trade Jalen Brunson for James Harden. Now, I do want to ask you this, and we're only getting started on today's show. Thanks for joining us here. Are you surprised that the Sixers are expected to trade Harden? Y for yes, N for no. I'm typing my Y because I did not see this coming. For the Sixers and for the acquiring team, there are, of course, pros and cons with Harden. And for the Sixers now losing him, they lose a player who led the NBA in dimes last year with nearly 11 per night. His assist-to-turnover ratio was the best of his NBA career. He runs the two-man game really well alongside Joel Embiid. His offensive splits here very, very good at 21 points per game, 44% shooting, and him knocking down 38.5% of his three-point tries was the second-best mark of his NBA career. He did win Game 1 and Game 4 against Boston with the 40-plus point per game performances and had game winners in both of those matchups. But after that, of course, it was another playoff flameout as he did not show up in the hostile environment of TD Garden in Game 7 and looked as though he gave up. And also with Harden, a very good three-level scorer whose ability to finish around the rim as he's gotten older has kind of escaped him a little bit, which is a concerning trend. The cons for Harden: he's 33 years old. How does he age? I imagine that was a little bit of a concern for the Sixers here. He doesn't always put a lot into his body, not in great shape. So he has played the 7th most minutes among active players now. And how does he hold up physically when the injuries have kind of racked up in recent years? He's way too inconsistent, especially when the lights are the brightest in the playoffs. No championship pedigree. And his personality is one that I don't love because he lacks accountability when he does fail. And that's something that really, really bothers me. And I imagine that's something that Nick Nurse wants to change about this Sixers culture because they've been a soft and enabling culture over the last 4 years. If this is it for Harden, and it looks as though that is going to be the case, this is how his Sixers career goes down. In 2021, 2022, after the Sixers traded Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and first-round picks for him, 21 points per game, 40% from the field, and a paltry 32.5% from three-point range. This past year, though, his numbers really increased. Average a double-double per night, 21 points per game, 44% from the field, and that second-best career mark from three-point range of 38.5%. But the playoff numbers with the Sixers were certainly not good enough. And hopefully Joel Embiid is okay with this move because I do think that Harden, and with the offensive style that he plays, the ball does die. He is way too ball-centric, and I thought that the Sixers were a better offensive unit when James Harden was kind of the second or third offensive scoring option after Maxey and Embiid, because when he's dribbling around for 18 to 20 seconds, sometimes guys just hang around that three-point arc, and like I said, the ball dies, and that is not producing great offensive basketball as far as efficiency goes when the NBA playoffs do come around. Now, I do want to shift gears here to Tyrese Maxey, because I believe that Tyrese Maxey is a big component of this potential trade of James Harden that looks as though it's looming, it's going to happen. First, though, this coming in from Jake Fisher here, that the Clippers and Sixers have been in contact this week, league sources tell Yahoo Sports, where Los Angeles, among wide-ranging talks on Marcus Morris and Norman Powell, have approached Philadelphia on separate ideas of trading for James Harden and Tobias Harris. Harris played his best basketball of his career with the Clippers. He was a borderline all-star a couple of years ago when the Sixers did acquire him, and I think that if he goes to a lot of other teams in the NBA where he's a second or third option, he's a 20 points per game guy who can knock down about 45% of his shots and 40% of his shots from downtown. Norman Powell is certainly a player that I would be intrigued by here. Coming in off the bench, he can get a bucket. He's a baller, and I think that Philadelphia would really enjoy his fearlessness that he possesses. 17 points per game this past year. He's really tough, has that dog in him. He knocked down just shy of 48% of his shots, shot almost 40% from three-point range on almost 5 three-point attempts per night. So the thinking here with the Sixers, if Maxey can take that next step, we have the reigning MVP in Joel Embiid. Do we try to bring in a bunch of role players to make this team a little bit deeper and not as ball-centric, built around the likes of James Harden? And then for Marcus Morris, Philadelphia's own, Him and his twin brother went to Kansas. They've gone on to have very, very solid careers. Markieff Morris is his brother. 11 points per game this past year. The shooting numbers, not all that great. Brian Windhorst, also with this, saying that Philadelphia is a potential landing spot for Kyrie Irving. Is Kyrie in the cards to replace Harden? Another reminder, NBA free agency beginning on Friday. There's a lot that's going to transpire with this team. Who do you want the Sixers to get back for James Harden? Drop me a name down below in the comment section. Feel free to interact with me on Twitter and Instagram too, by the way, at Chase_Senior. It's the same handle on both social media platforms. Do we have the Maxey numbers? Let's get to Tyrese Maxey here, because I do believe that the Sixers might be looking to trade James Harden because they think that Maxey can become Joel Embiid's Jamal Murray. And what's crazy is that the first 3 years of Maxey's career have actually been better than Jamal Murray's first 3 years of his career. Now, Murray might have the better handle. He might have the better mid-range game, and he's a little bit bulkier than Maxey. But just when talking about scoring the rock, Tyrese Maxey has been better. Year 1, 8 points per game out of Kentucky. Thank you, Mike Muscala, for that pick conversion in the NBA bubble. 46% from the field, 30% from three-point range. Year 2, 17.5 points per game, where he doubled his point production. 48.5% from the field. Those numbers went up, and his three-point numbers went up to almost 43%. And then this past year, the points per game continued to rise, 20 points per game. The field goal percentage, very good, considering how much he had the rock and how much he shot it, 48% from the deck and 43% from three-point range. Tyrese Maxey, analytically, is also one of the best catch and shoot, one of the best dribble pull-up, and one of the best players in the NBA at finishing within 10 feet. All of those, very, very important, and we know that Daryl Morey is a very analytical guy. So let me say this again. There's so much to talk about with this team, and I put out a bunch of videos on my social media pages. A lot of you might be new here. What's good? Thanks for watching the show at Chase_Senior. Give me a follow. Let me know what you think about the show. What do you think the Sixers are going to do? Hit me up on social media right now.